Right then, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the Air Elemental. This is the third episode of the Monster Manual review, and this is the third monster in the Monster Manual, the Air Elemental, the first of the Elementals of CR5. I like these things. I was a bit mean to the Aboleth in the last video, okay? You know, it let me down. It was an underperformer. The Air Elemental, in 2024 at the very least, is actually a pretty solid monster, considering it's a gas. Right? This thing has 90 HP, but it is resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, as well as lightning. So if you've got a melee heavy group, you might as well double this thing's effective HP to 180. That's really good for a CR5. That's actually pretty damn good. Not only that, it is also immune to practically all of the conditions that actually matter, as well as poison and thunder damage. This thing's defensive stats are extremely good. And I like this because when I run elementals, especially at 2014 versions, I like to homebrew them to make them a lot harder to kill, because it's never made a lot of sense to me that even with like a +1 magical sword, that you'd be doing full damage with a sword to a literal piece of living air, right? That's never made a lot of sense to me. So the fact that these things have straight up resistance to all physical damage, even if it's magical, I actually like that change. I think that is a good change. It makes them feel like more of a threat. Elementals should be like the ultimate threat, or one of the ultimate threats, for like a low level tier 1 group, right? Because it is a piece of the environment that has come to life. Yeah, that is like, how do you fight air itself? With magic, obviously, but, you know, if you're a fighter and you got a longsword, how do you fight this thing? And the answer is, you're going to have a hard time. Obviously, it has this air form where it can squeeze through areas as narrow as 1 inch. Realistically, it would probably be a lot smaller than that because it's literally just air. But I guess, you know, I tend to give elementals like a core, like one physical core that they have inside of them, which is like anchoring them to this world. In terms of its damage output, it can make 2 thunderous slam attacks, which do 14 damage each. That is an average of 28 DPR, CR5, with 2 attacks, +8 to hit. That's very likely to hit a level 5 character. That's not bad. It's not lethal. It's not dangerous. That's only going to be threatening to like really squishy level 5 characters like a wizard or a rogue or something like that. Your paladin, your barbarian, all that will tank this very easily. But it's still just enough damage to where, considering this thing's going to be lasting a lot more than your average 2 rounds that most monsters die in, or 1.5 rounds, because of its resistances, this thing might last 3, 4, even 5 rounds against a level 5 group if they are, you know, they're not all wizards. Right? If they're like all martial characters, barbarians, monks, fighters, that type of thing, then they're going to have a hard time bringing this thing down. And that 28 DPR on average, with a +8 to hit, meaning it's likely to hit all of its attacks, that will very quickly overwhelm the average level 5 group. It has its whirlwind on a recharge of 4 to 6, which is pretty good. DC 13 strength save, somewhat easy to make, to be fair, even for a level 5 group. That deals 24 damage, and it can knock you up to 20 feet away. Now this is where the elemental can become a true threat. If you're fighting this thing out in an open field, it's already kind of dangerous, but with this, if you've got hazards in the field, like let's say you're on the edge of a cliff, or there's spike traps, or pools of lava, or anything like that around the environment that the air elemental could potentially knock you into, now it becomes an extremely threatening monster, and you've got to really think tactically to take this thing down. So its stats are solid. I think there's nothing wrong with these stats. There's nothing I can think of that I would improve for these for a CR5 monster. I think this is perfect, very well balanced, almost very threatening if you're a martial group. But synergy. How does it synergize with other monsters in the book? Quite well, actually. This thing could be a summoned monster for practically any magic caster, right? An evil wizard in its tower, you know, a gnoll shaman or a goblin hexer, or a bandit deceiver, I think they're called, or the bandit wizards. Any kind of magic caster enemy that's like CR5 or higher, even some that are lower than CR5, like a hexer I think is a CR4, you can have a bunch of them summon this thing in, and now that supplements a boss fight, right? Because this thing's going to be a very good guardian for a magic caster, because like I said, if you're a martial heavy group, this thing is very tanky, right? It's effectively got 180 HP. So, magic casters, perfect synergy. How does it synergize with other actual monsters, though? Blue dragons, flying around, dominating the skies, summoning air elementals, and in fact, air elementals, because they're just air, can kind of conform to their environment that they're in. So these could work for almost any dragon as a minion, because if it's a blue dragon, they could be in the sands, basically becoming a sandstorm elemental. They could easily cause an actual sandstorm as well. If it's red dragon, they could be in the lava, flying around, you know, splashing lava everywhere, or like a smoke elemental that's like a residue from the dragon's breath and its power or something like that you could do. There is, in the Rime of the Frost Maiden, I think it is, there's like an ice witch, or whatever they're called, like a frost maiden, who can turn into a flurry elemental, and it just uses the air elemental stats, obviously the 2014 version, but you could do that with this. They could be in an Arctic environment as a flurry elemental, just, you know, ice and snow swirling around. Like I said in the first video, they work perfectly with the Aarakocra Aeromancer as a summon, that they can back it up. This thing is a perfect minion for almost any monster. Now, the one criticism I do have of the elementals in these books is there's not enough variety of like mid-tier elementals. The typical elementals of CR5 are good, but if you're in tier 3 or tier 4 of play, an air elemental realistically is a nuisance. It's just a pest that's, you know, pecking at your heels. It's not really doing any substantial damage at that level. It's probably going to miss most of its attacks. You're probably going to succeed your strength save against its whirlwind ability. It's not really going to do a lot. In large numbers, I guess they can, but this thing ultimately is best used in tier 2 of play, or tier 1 if you want it to be like a boss fight, something like that. Tier 3 and 4, they drop off a bit. I kind of wish there were greater elementals in these books, like there are in like the Monster Manual Expanded and things like that. I'm pretty sure they're in that book anyway. I know obviously you have things like the Elemental Cataclysm, the Salamanders, and things of that, and obviously the Genie, like the Djinn. But they're not the elementals I'm thinking of when I imagine elemental. I imagine elemental, like the air elemental, as just a living piece of the environment. So in that terms, it would be nice if they had more variety. They've given more variety to a lot of other creatures, like the Aarakocra we've already covered. So a greater air elemental, like as a CR10, would be really, really, really nice to have, I think. But other than that, I think this is a solid A tier monster. A for air elemental.